Zuken E3 series makes creating schematics very simple and very quick. As you can see here to my right, I've got a database window open up currently. Now within that, all my components are sorted within their specific function or class. For example, I've got my contactors, my relays, circuit breakers, etc. So the simplicity of this becomes, I can just expand the table out and I've got my different components. So you can actually sort in various ways quite easily, but I've just left it as the default. At the same time, there are a few different search parameters, so I can quickly search by supplier, component name, or various options. I can actually quite easily go to search configuration. As you can see here, there's a fair bit of attributes which can become my search criteria, but I've just left these three to keep it simple. So quite simply, I can click on a component and it gives me the graphic or the preview rather for the specific component quite easily, and at the same time I can expand it and it's going to tell me what's inside it. So this one's got the single schematic symbol. At the same time it does have a model. So if I am creating a panel, it's got to have this circuit breaker model as well, and by the looks of it, it looks like it's a step file as well. So quite easily, it's very simple. I can either right click and I can have a few more options. Otherwise, I can just simply click and drag. Once I drag it, you can see quite simply, it's got F1. It just goes off the IEC standards and gives it the designation based on the letter code. Now F1 represents obviously the first one. So if I drag a second one, it's going to be F2. So no component can have the same designation. It won't actually allow you to rename them accordingly. So as you see, it's going to say that I can't. So quite simply, there's a fair bit of freedom within that. Now, there are some components which have multiples. So if I go to the second one, they've actually auxiliary contacts. So the first component here has these two auxiliaries within it as a graphic representation. However, the remaining are actually active. So you can see here where I hover over the dot actually shows up on the node, whereas these it doesn't. So actually connect into these quite simply, but I can't connect out of those. However, I can actually come into my device table and I've got F3. Now these two specific are in there, so I can actually place them in. I can actually place them on different pages should I need to. And you can see here quite simply, once I do that, it actually gives me the cross-reference within the main schematic. At the same time, the auxiliary contacts actually have as cross-reference as well. So it allows a fair bit of trackability within that. So I can actually click on here and I can right click and go jump as well. So I can actually jump through to device T and to the main schematic should I need to. So you can actually place things on different pages, different locations, and it allows quite easily to track. So jump to schematic and it jumps straight over here and highlights it for me. If you do have this specific component within the panel and I had it placed, it would actually allow me to jump to the panel or to the schematic as well, quite simply. So from that, there are different other tools. There are a few other tools that are quite beneficial that make life a lot quicker and a lot easier. So the connection tools as well. So basically I can do a free connection quite easily. There's a fair bit of freedom, and then I can actually leave it open-ended should I need to. At the same time, there's a few auto connecting options. So I can do a horizontal or a vertical rather auto connect, which will allow me to do those. There is also a multi-tool, which allows me to connect over bends a bit easier if I need to. And I can hold shift and it'll give me an alternate connection quite simply, which can be done. At the same time, there is curve connection tools if I want to do something that's a bit more visually representative of certain things. So the good thing about E3 series is it allows a fair bit of flexibility. At the same time, it doesn't mean you have to deviate from whatever you're doing currently. So these particular components, for example, these are just going off the manufacturer submitted schematic symbols, which, for example, is this one here. So the ZUK 071318. Now, within that, you can actually edit this specific component or this specific symbol. Actually, this is this one here. You can actually edit this symbol out of the database and you can actually make it representative of your own. The good thing about that is every time that specific comes up, so you can see this next component actually has the same symbol called up. So it's actually going to update. So once you do that, you can actually update in your project. So you can actually have the symbol representing what you currently use. So the database allows a fair bit of freedom in that sense. So you can have things looking the way you like them. Otherwise, you can just go off the default. Similarly, if you want to create a component, it becomes quite simple because you have an existing component tree in there. So if there's something very simple, you can actually just right click and you can go a new component based on an existing, or otherwise you can edit an existing one. So I'll give you a demonstration of capabilities as such of creating components or editing components. So if I go back to the circuit breakers, this particular one, so I can actually click on new component. I can call it ABC, for example. And then here, once I've got it, I can actually start to look at the different attributes within the component. So the database actually holds a lot more information than just what's visually in the schematic. So you can actually go in, you can have your supplier information. There's a fair bit of description as well. At the same time, there are different languages as well. So the class and description are all multilingual, which you can cycle through should you need to. You can also have a hyperlink as well if you've got a PDF, power loss. There are a whole different attributes you can actually add to. These are the attributes that are set in the project or in the database as default. For example, lead time as well. But quite simply, you can actually create a custom schematic, a custom attribute if you want to include that. So if you've got your custom part number or that's unique to your organization, you can actually add that within the componentry and within the database of the project. So you can see here, I'm just going to go make a copy. So you can see the structure gets brought up. So this particular one has a view, it's got a model, and it's got the 6-pin schematic symbol. So I'll just click next and edit component graphically. So you can see here, it's giving me the project within the views, the model symbol, and the schematic symbol. So I could actually edit it if I needed to. So that being said, the ZUK, this particular one is actually a symbol. So I can come into the symbols. I can go to ZUK 07. Which one is this one? So it's 1323, which is this particular one. So if I wanted to actually click on edit and actually make changes permanently, should I need to. So you can see here it's a bit different to what we normally see. So you've got your node in the directions. So the good thing about these, if you look up here to the top left, there are different options as far as node go. So these particular ones are in a direction. So you can actually select direction, you can select multi-direction or even pass through should you need to. So it's giving you a fair bit of freedom or restricting if you need to. Now at the same time, I can just click here just to show what shows up. So the pin numbers are showing up, the reference between devices is going to show up here. I can change that if I need to. And these are the default displays that are going to show up if it's included in the project as well. So the higher level assignment, location, the device destination. So these two will always come up. These two, obviously, if you do them at the same time, if you need any technical data, you can do that. So if you want to add different text, whether it's a fixed text or in the green, it becomes a smart text. Once again, these are the different attributes that are in. There's a fair bit, but you can add that pretty quickly, and then it becomes an automatically done. So with that, the schematics drawn, so this particular one is drawn as a set of symbols. You can use your graphic tools down here to make changes or create new drawings. Similarly, you can actually go File, Import, and you can import a drawing or a DXF, DWG file, and you can actually have a schematic. So if you're using a mechanical program currently with a schematic that you used to use, you actually delete this one, you can put a new one into place. You just put your pins in the same position, then you can right click, you can save to the database, and then it'll update the component. So this component, for example, uses this symbol and it'll update in here. So when I make the change, it'll update in here. Then I can come back to my project, I can right click and I go updating project. Should it be in the project and it make any necessary changes. So it allows a fair bit of freedom within that to keep your components familiar. That being said, there are a few different things in the database that are included. So this sheet, for example, this particular sheet can be changed. This is just the default. However, you can actually change it to include whatever information do you want. So these particular attributes are all part of the sheet. So you can come in, you can change the drawing number and date of modification and changes and anything else that you might, or notes or anything you might do. And it'll update here accordingly. These are all smart text positions as such. However, you can create a new sheet based on whatever you like, whatever's familiar. And once again, the easiest way probably would be to import a DWG and just in place the smart text where you need to. So the shields, the sheets are one of the many things that you can actually modify in the database. Similarly, for example, there are cable types. They're all database driven. All information that's coming out of the database. So once you change that, it allows full flexibility and functionality from there. Similarly, obviously the attributes, if you want to create custom attributes, you can do so. So you can see here, one of the benefits I find using an electrical package like Zuken E3 as opposed to using a mechanical tool is the flexibility. You know, you can move a componentry quite easily. Once you've made a change, all the connection lines become flexible as such, so they'll move with you. At the same time, so if I hover over, it's going to give me a signal. So every time I add a connection line, it automatically defaults and adds a signal. It goes to the next particular one. This is obviously something that's quite unique to electrical CAD programming, so you can actually track them. So if you've got a bit more of a complex project and you've got your signals that you can actually label, you can actually come through and you can actually highlight a signal. So for example, signal 1, that's it there. So you can actually highlight it through. So if you had your live circuitries and your neutral and everything else, as long as it's renamed accordingly, you can quite easily track it and follow through in your project. There are a fair few different tools you can use as far as connections. At the same time visually, so I've got my crosshair, I've got my grid, and there's a ruler if you need to. You can also split the panels within multiples. Everything there to make your life a lot easier as far as creating schematics. Similarly speaking, you can actually create, you can copy sections. So I can copy components one to the other. Otherwise, I can copy a section over and place it through. So once again, once I copy, it gives me a new device designation and the signal name gets added to the new connection. So it's not actually going to let me double up. What you can do, however, is you can place as a graphic or place certain components as a graphic. So I can place in your device view. So these are the two different views of this particular component. So I can place it here if I wanted to. And you can see here that F3 becomes #1. So it's not actually a different component. This one belongs obviously to there, and it allows me to have that freedom if I need to do it in a multiple. So if I need to repeat a component, it can, but it's not going to double it up on the bill of materials. So once again, I can go report sheet, I can create a bill of materials, and it's going to give me the different components that I've got. This is just a basic bill of materials that's, again, database driven. However, we've got different options that we can do. So if you want to add involve costing and different attributes within your bill of materials, that's quite easy. Similarly, you can actually export to Excel if you need to.